Hello, welcome to the lecture series on automobile engineering. In the last session, we were discussing about suspension system. I also illustrated various dependent suspension or solid suspension system. Now, in this session, let us discuss independent suspension systems. What are the advantages of independent suspension? Already I have explained independent suspension system. So here the wheel, this is the suspension. You have control arms and you have spring and a damper in between. This wheel will move related to this frame, right? But its movement will not affect this at all. That's why we call this as independent. Since it is moving relative to this, particularly the sprung mass is not affected much. It remains almost, horizontal position like this. So the occupant here will be feel comfortable compared to a dependent suspension system. Why independent suspension? To accommodate suspension, the space requirement is little. And we can see, if you study vehicle dynamics, we deal with handling of the vehicle. There we talk about understeer, oversteer and neutral steer. In one of the videos, I've just given an idea about what exactly understeer and oversteer means. See, suppose if you have a vehicle, right, and you are taking a turn, and this vehicle has to follow this intended path while taking a turn. By chance, the vehicle, something follows a path like this, then you need to steer more than what is required as per the Ackermann's angle, right? What is required, you have to steer more than that to follow this path. Thus, such a vehicle we call it as understeered vehicle. Sometimes you have to steer less than what is required. It will turn on its own. We call it as oversteer. And there is a condition at which it will steer on its own. This is not very much preferred. So the tendency of the driver is to steer. When you are taking a turn, you will be conscious about that. So it is a practice to make a passenger car slightly understeer. So by adjusting the various wheel alignment angle, it is possible to make the vehicle understeer, or using the suspension itself, like suspension design, we can ensure the vehicle always understeers. That is another advantage. Easier steerability with existing drive and low weight. As I said, there are two things: sprung mass, suspension, then unsprung mass and tire. Okay, so if there is an uneven road, it has to follow the contour at high speed of the vehicle. This weight should be very low. Low weight means low inertia, so it responds faster. So it is necessary, it should be low weight, so that you can have better road contact or road holding. And no mutual wheel influence means you know that suppose this on a bump, this will not affect this wheel and vice versa. So this is what exactly, there are many advantages. That is why in the passenger cars and passenger vehicles, it is always preferred to have independent suspension as it provides lots and lots of comfort to the occupants. So let us look at the degrees of restraint while designing the suspension system. So an independent suspension allows only one path of motion of the knuckle relative to the body. What it means is, you know, as mentioned, it allows only this. That is in the Z direction. Okay? And all other constants like rotation about Z, you know, a rotation, the suspension rotation about Y, suspension rotation. Wheel will rotate about its Y. Okay, this suspension. Yes, then displacement along Y, rotation about X. Correct, all these things, right? Displacement, rotation about X, displacement Y, rotation about Y, rotation about Z, all these things have to be constant. Only allow displacement in the Z direction. I am talking about the suspension degrees of freedom. Suspension. Okay. So this is what needs to be done. So as I mentioned earlier, for each degree of freedom, to arrest each degree or restrain each degree of freedom, one link is required. So there are 5 degrees. So I require 5 links. Okay, that is what suspension limits 5 degrees of restraint, limits motion. Designers try to determine how to limit motion in 5 degrees of freedom in case of independent suspension. To provide restraint in 5 degrees, require 5 tension and compression links. So this I have explained. This is what is required. We look at this. A MacPherson strut. This kind of suspension I have used. Here I have used an E-arm. E-arm. As I mentioned, it is equivalent to 2 links. A MacPherson strut is also equivalent to 2 links. Then you have a steering arm, another link. Totally you are using 5 links. You can see here 1, 2, 3 and these 2, 5. So if you take a double wishbone suspension like this, yes, 1, 2, you can also call it as E-arm if you want. So this is an E-arm, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So that's how 5 linkages are used. Okay, this SLA means short long arm. Out of these 2 wishbones, one of the arms will be shorter than this. That we will discuss later. So thus there are 5 degrees of restraint and you require 5 links. You need to simulate that. Let us talk about another important thing, a roll center and roll axis. As I explained earlier, suppose this is your vehicle. These are the wheels, the axle, and you see here, suppose this is taking a turn like this. This I call it as inside, and this I call it outside. So there is a lateral load transfer like this. Okay, the vehicle rolls. So if this is the initial this thing, now this is the now center line, you draw this way. So this is what you call it as a roll angle. It rolls. It rolls about a particular center. That center we call it as roll center. So now let us see how to find a roll center for the front suspension. Then also understand how to find the roll center for the rear. And if you join the roll center from the front to the rear, then you are going to get a roll axis. Okay, let us discuss about that. Roll center and roll axis. The suspension is characterized by a roll center. You will have a roll center. I will explain this. It is the point around which the axle rolls when subjected to a pure roll moment. Pure roll moment. Then roll axis, it is the line connecting the roll centers of front and rear suspensions. Further, if you say, if the median plane of the car, a transverse plane in which horizontal lateral force applied to the rolling mass of the car will move the car sideways without causing it to roll. Say here, if I apply a force, it will simply slide. It will not roll at all. That means if I apply this force other than this point, somewhere here or here, definitely vehicle rolls. Okay, it follows that force applied above the roll axis at the center of gravity causes roll. Also that forces, if any, applied below the roll axis will cause banking. Okay, so let us understand something like this. Suppose I hinged a point like this. Let us say I have a spring like this, and I have a weight. So its CG is here. If I disturb this, it will roll like this, oscillate like this. Correct now? Oscillate like this. It will come here like this. You can consider this is a roll center. This you can call it as center of gravity. Center of gravity is above these things. Instead of that, if the center of gravity is here, it will oscillate like this. You consider the cradle, child's cradle. So if this is the cradle over here, child is sleeping over here, and the bar is here, about this bar it is oscillating. The center of gravity is here. It will just oscillate. From the side view, if you see, it will oscillate like this. But if it is above, then in this case, a rollover can happen. In the other case, a rollover won't happen. It will oscillate. So, you please remember that in our conventional vehicles, we keep the roll center below the center of gravity. But many of the times, sports cars, the roll center is above the center of gravity of the car. It's like the center of gravity is below the roll center. That vehicle, Formula car and all that, they won't roll over. you see an SUV, it rolls over. Okay. So that's what exactly I'm talking about. How exactly we place the roll center is very important. So what exactly a roll center is? Assume this is the left wheel, this is the right wheel. This is the upper control arm, lower control arm. This is the vehicle. I'll just produce these two lines, they meet at one point. Same way I do the other way, I meet at one point. This point to this center I will join, and this point to this center I'll join. I'll get a point here, intersection point. This intersection point I call it as roll center. If I apply a force at this roll center, the vehicle will never roll, it will only slide. So suppose the center of gravity of the vehicle is somewhere here. If a lateral force is applied about this and the centrifugal force will be there, this centrifugal force and about this roll center, what it does, you will get a roll moment. You will get a roll moment. So this height roll moment depends upon the force as well as this height. So where to have, how much roll moment to have, it all depends upon the suspension design. Okay, it all depends where to place the roll center, how much roll moment is required. Correct, that is what exactly we can decide by the suspension design. So physically the virtual reaction point is the intersection of the axis of any pair of suspension control arms. Mechanistically, it is the point where the compression and tension forces in the control arms can be resolved into a single lateral force. So when you are talking about defining about control arm, meaning is that when I apply this force, it will just slide, it will not roll. So you take the rear suspension and find the roll center. You take the front suspension, you take the roll center. Join these front roll center and rear roll center by an imaginary roll. We call it as vehicle roll axis. This is what we call it as roll axis. About this, the vehicle roll axis. So the question is, we design the suspension in such a way the roll axis always incline and the vehicle will be drooping down. The idea is that, see that most of the load, a large amount of load comes on the front axle and less amount of load comes on the rear axle, so that the vehicle under all conditions should understeer. That's the idea. So you can have a suspension like this. So how much roll center, what should be the position of roll center, roll moment, all this kind of a thing, it all depends upon the linkage. And for each type of design of suspension, how to find the roll center, that procedure is available with many textbooks. So you can use that standard procedure and you can always learn how to find the roll centers. So rolling load transfer, you just see here. Initially, this is the position of the vehicle, the red colored one, and the center of gravity is here. And you are taking a turn, and from inside to outside load get transferred. It takes the position like this, and the center of gravity position is here. Through the center of gravity, weight of the vehicle will be acting. So to begin with, this was the roll center. Correct. H is the height of the center of gravity from ground. We know this we have learned. And this is the roll center height, okay, from the ground. So this will become h minus hrc. Is that okay? You can consider this length is this one. And let us consider this distance now is d. So sin phi is equal to this d by h minus hrc, and d is equal to this. So now through this point, W is acting about the roll center. It creates a moment like this. So rolling moment. Okay, rolling moment you call it. So this outer will get more load, inner wheel gets less load. So load on the outer wheel is given by this W and this length LL. The way I derived the equation earlier for the dynamic load transfer, longitudinal dynamic load transfer, similar way if you derive it, this is what we get. And T is the track width, total track width. That is LL plus LR is T. So similarly, load in the inner wheel is this. This will lose the load and this will gain the load. This is what we call it as load transfer. Now, you have to design your suspension in such a way it should resist rolling. That's a very important thing. As I mentioned, when you are taking a turn like this, load gets transferred from inside. Sorry, now this is the case. This way it should be. This way it should be. Load gets transferred from inside to outside. You can see that. Right, now in the center of gravity position, so there is a rolling moment like this. Okay, now your suspension should, this side it will get compressed, this side it will get stretched. The compressed spring will try to stretch out, so it will have a force like this, and the stretched spring will try to compress, so there will be a force like this. This force about this center of gravity will create a clockwise moment. This will also create a clockwise movement. So you need to design this stiffness in such a way you can do that. But it also should know that it also should satisfy the requirement of natural frequency of the vehicle. So that's why we have to have some additional spring other than this one. That additional stiffness will be provided by this anti-roll bar. We can model and we can explain this kind of a thing. Anti-roll bar will provide. So, as I mentioned, a suspension should be able to maintain wheel alignment angles. What are those? Camber, toe, caster, okay, kingpin inclination or steering axis inclination, all these things. You take this suspension system, correct? If I join, this is the steering axis. Sorry, I have to pass through these points. This is the steering axis. So using this arm about this, I can steer this knuckle. This is the steering axis. Then you will have stub axle and all those kind of a thing. You mount the wheel, and then there is what you can call it as the camber. Then look at these positions and all that thing. Then you can say toe out or toe in depending on your requirement. Again, you see this line from the side view. Yes, there is caster angle. Is it okay? So these systems should be designed, these linkages have to be designed to maintain this angle within the limits specified during static as well as dynamic conditions. That's very important. Alright, now the question is, these suspension stiffness have to be taken so that So ride isolation has to be done and comfort has to be provided. And this linkage also have to be strong enough to take the squat and dive effect. And this again, these linkages and this stiffness and this all together should be able to even create an anti-roll effect whenever it is taking a turn. So while designing this suspension system, all these things are important. However, designing suspension is quite a challenging challenge. It is necessary the weight should be less, they should be compact, they should respond very fast so that road holding capability should be there. And in the meantime, as I said, anti-roll effect, you should have an anti-squat, anti-dive, all these effects have to be created. So there are many possible designs. Some designs meet some requirements, some designs may not meet those requirements. So that's how it has resulted to various types of front suspension designs. So let me describe. But in the meantime, as I mentioned, there should be 5 linkages to constrain the motion, except just only vertical motion should be allowed. So this way also we have to take into consideration and design these things. Another very important thing is when you design the front suspension, see that the roll center is at the lower position. And the same when you design the rear suspension, roll center at a higher position. When you join those two roll centers, there should be a roll axis and it will be dropping towards one so that the vehicle should slightly understand. In all conditions, the vehicle should remain like it should be understanding. All these requirements you have to keep in mind and design this. Anyway, that designing a suspension is quite involved, taking all this kind of a thing. Only here I describe various designs, illustrate various suspension designs. What is the most popular one is double wishbone suspension. You see here, bird. This is the wishbone. This is the bone, which will have this shape. It is called double wishbone. If somebody two people start pulling this, whoever gets a longer piece, they are lucky. Their wishes will be fulfilled. That's why it's called wishbone suspension. There are double wishbone suspension. Okay, left, right, and all that. Here I have marked what all their advantages. Double, it's also in the shape of the English letter A, that's why it's also called A-arm. The double A-arm design offered even further improvements in ride quality and road holding than other designs. Most quality car manufacturers now use this system. The double A-arm uses solid, rigid control arms to mount the knuckle to the chassis. These arms prevent deflection during cornering, which ensures that the steering and wheel alignment remain consistent. Again, they show some disadvantages. Even though the double A-arm suspension provides a vast improvement in ride and cornering stability with equal lengths upper and lower arms, there is no negative camber generally as the wheel moves into bump. This results that as the car rolls, the wheel gains positive camber and loses traction just as the MacPherson strut suspension does. What it means is that, meaning is this. Suppose you have wheels like this. Right, these are front wheels. Taking a turn, load gets transferred. You see here, this wheel tilting like this. This way say it gains positive camber. That's what we are saying. Correct. So you are making more and more, steeper, like circle, then it will, and at high velocity if you take a turn, it will gain more and more positive camber. So then what happens? It will start pulling the vehicle. That's a disadvantage to talk about, because these two arms are equal in length. Suppose if I make one of these arms shorter, then it will not be able to stretch like that. Then you can overcome this disadvantage. That is what they call it as unequal A-arm. Short, long arm suspension. This arm is short and this arm is long. So you will not have that positive camber gain. That's the kind of thing, like whenever steeper turns you take. Okay, so that is another improved version of that, right? Another type of suspension in most of the small compact cars that we use is the MacPherson strut. This is called the MacPherson strut. There is a lower control arm as it is, but the upper control arm is this strut. Of course, this linkage is there. It is known as MacPherson strut because it is designed by L.S. MacPherson. Of course, now it is lighter, compact, and very good for the front suspension in small cars. All these advantages are there. You see, and front steering vehicle, it's very, very easy. So the MacPherson design offered all the improvements in ride quality and road holding that an independent suspension can mean. Is lighter. That's another very important thing. That's why there will be a good road holding as well as ride quality. The MacPhersons are extremely compact and allow smaller overall chassis dimension. This is perfect for small cars. Suited for front wheel drive, because the MacPherson design uses the strut as the upper suspension link. There is nothing located directly behind the steering knuckle front hub. This provides the clearance necessary for drive shaft on a front wheel drive. This is the kind of this you will have get the space. Then they talk about scrub radius issues, lack of camber gain. That's another kind of it. These are some disadvantages will be there. So you need to tune this and meet those requirements. There are something like rear independent trailing arm suspension. Trailing arm means, you see here, this is the rear portion. You can see here, this is the differential. This is the independent suspension only. Okay, this is trailing, axle. This is the damper. This is the arm. Here I connect it to chassis. Wheels are trailing. That's why it's called trailing arm. This is a trailing arm. So you can see this trailing arm. And I connect this to chassis using this rods or pins, whatever it is. Like this on the other side. So you can also have something like inclined like this. Okay, then we call it as a semi-trailing arm. So when exactly they prefer this? So hope you understand what we mean by trailing. The wheels are trailing this. Suppose this is back side, it is front, then it's leading arm. So it's a trailing arm suspension, and the rear I'm talking about. So trailing arm axle is relatively simple and is popular in front wheel drive vehicles. It offers the advantages that the car body floor can be flat and the fuel tank and the spare wheel can be positioned between the suspension control arms. Correct. Trailing arm suspension, that is longitudinal arm with lateral axis of rotation. The camber angle of the wheel supported by trailing arm will not change during up and down motion. This Z motion kind of. Trailing arm suspension has been successfully being used in a variety of front wheel drive vehicles to suspend their rear wheels. Okay, these are about this. Similarly, you have another kind of design, that's what you call it as torsion bar design. This is the torsion bar. This is the lower control arm. Okay, then you have damper. Then you have again to the frame you can connect the upper control arm. Okay, then you have the steering knuckle. Then stub axle. Here you can mount a wheel. And this is your steering part. Okay, it will act as a torsional spring. I don't have to use a coil spring here. This itself will act as a spring. Sometimes you want to have a better control. For each constraint you can use one link. So then you get there are 5 links like this. Then you call it as a multi-link suspension. So one of multi-link's key advantage is that engineers can alter a single suspension parameter without affecting anything else. On double wishbone designs, you are always altering at least 2, whether you like it or not. Multi-link can also keep the wheel more or less perpendicular to the road, maximizing the tire's contact patch and grip. What exactly it means is you want to change adjust only the camber or caster, whatever it is. Like, these parameters, toe, all this can be independently done. That's what the whole idea here. So multi-link suspension. So there is again another independent suspension system. They call it as the Dion suspension, right? So what are their advantages and disadvantages? I have listed out over here. I'm not really doing the analysis of that. I'm just illustrating various types of designs that are available. So these are some of the independent suspension systems we have that car makers or vehicle makers use. So thus we have studied the need for suspension system or functions of a suspension system, the suspension elements, types of dependent suspension, types of independent suspension. But all these suspension systems are called as passive suspension systems. Why they are called passive suspension system? And what we mean by semi-active and active suspension system? Let us discuss this in the next session. Now we'll stop at this point, and thank you very much for your attention.